Alright guys, welcome back to our green portion of our Kaldheim set review for Limited. Yanks is with us again, so we're going to be recording all of these today. Check out the other videos. We're going to jump right in because we are on a bit of a time constraint. Alright, let's kick it off. We have a 2-mana aura here for green with Enchant Creature. Enchant Creature gets +2/+2, it has reach, and is every creature type. So the creature type could be very useful depending upon our synergy in that area. I've seen some really big payoffs for giants at the uncommon and even common range. So maybe something to consider. +2/+2 and reach is no small thing for 2 mana either, but enchantments are always questionable because they leave you open for 2-for-1s. What are we thinking?
Yeah, I'm never a big fan of auras, but the creature type part is interesting here. Wondering what we're going to see about that in the rest of green, but yeah, it's still just the risk of getting 2-for-1 on these, and really almost certainty of eventually getting 2-for-1.
Yeah, I definitely agree
Just
with that. I typically don't run them. There are some big payoffs for this, so I will say typically I almost don't always like look at them. I will run it if I think I have a lot of payoffs for creature type, but also I think that this is a better sideboard card than most auras, because if it turns out in game 1 they don't have a ton of single target removal, then this card is pretty big payoffs for 2 mana. It's very aggressive, prevents like the flyers from happening. If
yeah,
I think that this is going to stick on the board, I think it's pretty powerful.
yeah. I think the only time I'm playing this in my main deck is if I have either a ton of creature type synergies
Yes.
or I have no defense against flyers. And I need something for that.
I agree on both of those statements, and I'm on that 2 boat for main deck. But like I said, I think that this is slightly better to pick up for the sideboard than most auras,
I agree with that. Yep, this is definitely a card I could see bringing in.
because this is a high impact aura, far more than average, I would imagine, and far more than what we've seen in most of the other cards this set. And if it's going to stick, then you want to play this card. All right,
Yep.
Battle Mammoth. We've got a 5-mana 6/5 Trampler. Seems fine. Whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. Hooja! Seems great. It's got Foretell, a little flexible.
Yeah, this card's just great. The stats on its own are very good. I play a 5-mana 6/5 trampler in any deck, and that ability is just great. It's big enough that it forces them to remove it, and when they do, you're going to get your card back.
Yep, so it's card advantage. It's a huge fat beater that if it's not answered will probably kill them. Let's say, hypothetically, they can't kill this, but they can kill some of your smaller stuff. Then you're just getting insane value, because eventually they'll have to deal with this and you're up 2 or 3 cards. Whereas if they do deal with this, you're still up a card. So I'm very happy with this card. It seems like a 5 to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would be surprised if this didn't end up being one of the top 4 or 5 cards in the set for limited.
All right, Blessing of Frost. We've got a snow sorcery for 4. Distribute X +1/+1 counters among any creature number of creatures you control, where X is the amount of snow spent. Cast this spell. Then draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Ooh, so you distribute them in such a way that they become power 4 or greater, and then you draw those cards, which seems great. So the snow deck loves this. It's 4 counters for 4 mana, hypothetically at the top end here.
Yeah.
And if you have creatures that are already 4 power, you just don't put counters on them and you still draw cards, which is nuts.
Yeah, this is to me the epitome of a split rating card, right? Because if you don't have snow mana, this card does actual nothing. It distributes no counters. I mean, maybe you can draw a card or two.
I was like, yeah, maybe you draw a card or 2 for 4 if you've got some fatties, but yes. Because that second clause will still trigger even if you don't distribute the +1/+1 counters.
Yeah. So, this is a 1 in the non-snow deck and probably a 4 in the snow deck.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I would say it's even slightly, like in most of the snow cards that we've seen so far, they're either 100% playable or not playable at all. This one seems a little bit more border. I feel like if you have a reasonable amount of snow, this is actually still good. Even if you're casting it for 2 snows, it's not the worst thing in the world. And if you're in green, you're probably getting a couple of the draw card triggers in addition to that. So you're maybe, if this says put 2 +1/+1 counters and draw 2 cards for 4 mana, that sounds good to me. So it's a half snow card. I give it a little bit more credit.
Yep, and I will say, just skimming very briefly through green, there is some snow fixing in green.
Okay, cool.
So that will help as well.
I agree. We'll call this a 1/4, but I do think that unlike the other snows, you can run this without being just balls deep in snow. Most of them require 10 plus permanents. This, you know, I'm happy to probably run this at like 5, 6 snow lands or something. Assuming I've got other large creatures. If I don't, then you're not happy to run it. Blizzard Brawl, that text is tiny. Go for it.
All right, we follow it up with another snow sorcery, Blizzard Brawl. It's just 1 green mana. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, the creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Then those creatures fight each other.
I like that there's so many snow creature permanents in this set, which we don't typically see quite as much of. So this is going to be much easier to trigger the indestructible than you might think in the snow deck. Even not in a snow deck, this is still a fight spell for 1 mana at sorcery speed, so it's playable.
Yes, I was actually just confirming that still works because it's worded a little awkwardly, but yes, it does still fight regardless of the snow.
Yes. So we have seen that in a couple of sets recently where it's got that additional indestructible clause or lifelink clause or whatever. So the snow decks are actually not going to have free reign on these cards, which is kind of nice. Otherwise, those decks are just going to be super busted. And green, you know, green is typically happy to fight your shit regardless of whether or not they get the second clause because their stuff is bigger than yours. Or at the very least, they can always, you know, get something smaller, even if it's not your biggest creature.
Yeah, we were always pretty happy to play Prey Upon, which was this card without the snow bonus.
Yeah.
So this is just a, you know, that with upside. You know,
sorcery speed, not
sorcery speed,
loving it.
Um,
It's a snow permanent, so you could dig it out, you could search for it, you can reveal the top card, get your free snow permanent. So it's got some bonuses. I like this card. You know, I think it's a 3 in any green deck, and I think it's probably a 4 in a snow deck.
Yep, definitely gets an upgrade in the snow deck, but any green deck will want this card.
All right, we've got some Princess Mononoke shit happening here. We got the Boreal Outrider. It is a snow elf warrior, 3 mana, 3/2. Base stats fine. Elf warrior, check, snow, check. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if snow of... Oh, God damn it. I need to make this larger.
If snow of any of that spell's colors was spent to cast it, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it.
Okay, so that doesn't include this creature. It only includes creatures that you're casting from here on out. So it's a 2 in a non-snow deck because it's a 3 mana 2/3. 3/2, whatever.
Yep. It's interesting that this is the first one of these cards we've seen where the snow clause requires specific colors.
That is true.
So like if you're spending, you know, if you're casting a second one of these, say, with one already out, but you're tapping a snow island, it doesn't help.
Yes.
So that's the first time we've seen that. So that restricts it a little bit.
But it doesn't make it a requirement, right? It's just an added bonus.
Yes. Yeah. It restricts the upside a little bit. But that being said, it's still, you know, still a good card.
2/3/5.
I think I'd be a little lower on the top end. I think it's at a 3 just because the snow deck is going to be taking a lot of snow lands. It's just whether or not they get the on color ones makes a really big deal here.
I can agree with that. It does seem like the snow colors are kind of confined to only 2 colors though. So like if you have the snow creatures, you're most likely going to have you have to get those, right? But if you have snowlands in a reasonable... You're not a snow deck unless you get a certain amount of playable snow lands. So I feel like if you're in the snow deck, then you probably... I'm kind of assuming that you've got enough, and then you're only in 2 colors, so it's very likely that you'll be able to cast it for its color, and it's only 1.
Yeah, you're just subject to what gets opened. You know, this could be... Snow seems to be focused in the Sultai colors, and you could have a draft where a whole lot of mountains and plains get opened.
Well, anytime you do a split rating like that, aren't you kind of always looking at the top end of that variance anyway of what's opened?
Yeah, I think this is just a little bit different than the other snow ones because of that color restriction. That's all. It's another piece that has to fall into place.
Fair. I'm kind of base assuming that there's not a ton of I don't know if I'm happy to run a crap ton of non-on-color snowlands. Like maybe some, but
Yeah, then I think it's going to be a lot harder to get the quantity you need to make snow work.
Yeah, maybe. All right. I'm convinced. Well, at that point, then I'm just going to say it's a 2/5 then, instead of a 2/3.
Okay.
All right, Broken Wings. 3 mana, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And instant speed. This is better than most.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a reprint because I feel like I've seen a card print in a recent set that made me want to sing the Mr. Mr. song. Broken Wings, so I'm pretty sure this is actually a straight reprint. But yeah, it's very flexible, which is nice. It's flexible in hitting 3 things that still you're probably mostly playing this out of the sideboard, but I can live with this in my main deck if I have to,
So,
especially in sealed.
So it seems like there are more artifacts and enchantments that we're going to be seeing, because there are artifacts in color specific as well as their own, category. But we've seen white artifacts in the white section. Plus, we've seen a ton of, there's going to be vehicles. There's a lot more auras in the set than we see in a lot of non-core sets typically. And, creatures with flying. I think between those 3 things, you're going to have a target.
You're going to have a target. Is it a target you want? I'm not thrilled to kill an aura with this because I want to 2-for-1 them if they play an aura.
I agree with that. I just think that this is better. Like, most of the time, this card, the green one, I'm not playing main deck, whereas this one, I feel like it's far more likely to be my 23rd playable card. Welcome, guys. We're getting a huge raid from Amazonian. Thank you guys so much for coming in. We are doing our limited set review, basically completely ignoring constructed. So welcome. Chime in, guys. Let us know what you think of these cards. We're giving them a rating between 1 to 5. 5 being only 1 or 2 cards in each color that are bombs that, if not answered immediately, are going to win you the game. 2 being like the baseline playable vanilla creatures, and then everything in between there. 1s are basically unplayable and limited. So again, welcome, guys. Thank you again so much. For my viewers, if you don't know Amazonian, she's got that day shift for Magic, so make sure you guys check her out. She's a great content creator, does a lot of limited and constructed. So 10 out of 10, please recommend, go check out. Yeah, I'm a little high. I am definitely higher on this card. I typically put this at a 1/1/5. I'm putting this at a 2, I think.
Yeah, I think when we see sagas, that might change my opinion a little bit, but I haven't seen an artifact or an enchantment I'm happy to kill yet with this.
So here's my thinking on that situation, right? If it hits a flyer, you're almost always happy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the fact that it's always going to have a target means that its downside is minimal, but its upside is big. Which is why I'm pretty happy to run it even in my best of 1 decks. In comparison to any other card that we typically see of this type. Because every set has one of these destroy target flyers, right? And I usually will never run them. But this one has a huge difference in downside. Because you are going to be able to hit a vehicle, an enchantment, a saga, the artifacts that, people are going to be playing. Especially in sealed, I think that you're going to have a moderate target at worst, if not a good target.
I do think this is definitely main deckable in sealed. I agree with that. I'm less likely to main deck it in draft, but it's not. I'm sure I will at some point in this set.
I think I will more. This is probably the best one I've seen of this in this, in the context of sagas and vehicles and everything else that's in this set. Green typically struggles for removal as well. I'm much happier. I'm actually almost leaning to 2/5 on this, whereas I typically just consider it to be unplayable. Yeah, but I put it at 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm still in the 1/5 range, and you're leaning 2/5, so we're in the middle there.
If you guys are enjoying this, if you guys decide that you like our formatting, all of these are going up on YouTube. The first 3 colors are already up on YouTube, so you guys can catch up on those as well. I also write the Cool Stuff Inc. Articles, where you guys will see these, and I'll have a grid talking about each card and its rating, as well as giving it a color coordination based on its peak for synergy. And these ratings will also be on the untapped.gg overlay. All right, we have Elder Leaf Mentor, a 4-mana 3/2. Already a little questionable. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 elf war. Okay, so it's a 4/3 power, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 4 mana for 4/3 worth of power, split over 2 bodies, 2 elves, 2 warriors for things that care about creature types. Um, not an exciting card, but it's playable.
Go wide mechanics are going to be happy. Anything with creature type synergy is going to be happy. And maybe sacrifice, like if you're green black and you've got some village rights or whatever, maybe is a little bit more happy. But yeah, I'm not typically excited to play this card. It's
a 2 for me.
Agreed. It's kind of like a vanilla 4-drop that I'm always hoping I'll have better, but typically, often can't find.
Yeah.
All right, Elvin. Oh wait, did I skip one?
No, we're good. With Elvin Bow is next as the green entry in this equipment cycle. It's an equipment for just a single green mana. And when it enters the battlefield, you can pay 2, and if you do, create a 1/1 grieved elf warrior creature token and attach Elvin Bow to it. An equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has reach, and the equip cost is 3. So this is the cheapest one of these in terms of just cost to create the creature. So you're paying 3 mana to get a 2/3 reach.
3 mana for a 2/3 reach. That's actually standard for what we see in a lot of things, and that's usually a fine filler card.
Yeah, this is to me the first one of these that the creature has been on par rate wise, which makes me want to actually be willing to play this card. It's not high impact, but I'm just going to treat this as a 3 mana 2/3 with a small 2/3 reach with a small mana upside and leaving behind a mediocre equipment.
I can see that.
That said, that just makes it a 2 in my book, but I will play this card. And again, I think like all of these, they're better in sealed.
I mean, a 2/3 for 3 with reach in my book is typically a 2. So, the equipment is 2/1 and gives reach. That's quite a bit of upside. I mean, granted, you won't be able to equip it very easily, but if the creature by itself is a 2, I'm happy to give this a 2/3. I'm way more happy to play this than the rest of the bows or equipments that we've seen.
It is definitely the best of the cycle.
I've even been happy with the other ones at a 2 because even though the creature was a bit low par, you still have that upside of the leftover equipment. So this feels slightly better to me. Also, guys, tons of follows. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys decided to stick around and check out the content. I really do appreciate it. Elvish Warmaster, 2/2 for 2. I'm already on board. It is a elf warrior. Oh, also, someone responded to all what we said about that, was saying was that creature card that created 2 elves was really good with elf synergies. Appreciate the input. I would have not thought of that. Whenever one or more other elves enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 elf warrior creature token. This ability triggers once each turn. Okay. And then it's got a built-in elves get +2/+2 and death touch until end of turn.
Yeah, I wish that was trample instead of death touch.
It's +2/+2 and death touch is weird. I agree.
Yeah.
But also, I'm never going to complain that my 1/1s become death touchers, regardless if they get that pump.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, this card's very good. We've seen already something that creates multiple elves.
In case you didn't know, I just want you to know that this is really good with elf synergies. Just throwing that out there.
I hadn't considered that. But now that you mention it, no, this card is great.
There's a fair amount of elves. There's a fair amount of changelings. It's a 2 mana 2/2, so I'm already getting my value. It's got a nice late game mana sink. It doesn't say other elves get +2/+2, so he himself gets it. So it's not like you have to have a ton of them to get that value. So it's just kind of a bear that does some really good stuff if you have the upside. At its base, it's a 2 on its own. You're playing it even if you have 0 elves. And then you've got this huge ceiling the more synergy you have with elves, which elves work really well with elves synergies. So pretty happy to run this card.
Yeah, I will be a fan of any reasonably priced any 2-drop with reasonable stats that is relevant in the late game. That's a mana sink. So
agreed.
You know, this card is going to have a range based on how many elves you have and how many changelings you have, but you know, I think it's at base at least a 3, maybe a 3/5, and then it can be the best card in your deck if you have a lot of elves.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm on that game plan too. I think the average deck, if you're not in blue, is probably sitting at a 3/5, and then, you know, like I said, it's got that huge ceiling. If you're, is there any, was there other colors that had elves, or is it just mostly green?
Black had a lot of elves.
So at its base, it's probably a 3 if you're not also in black, and if you're in black, there's probably enough elves scattered around where even if you don't have a ton of triggers, you'll have enough to make this pretty good.
What's really interesting to me is that green, black, and blue are the snow colors, and they're also the colors that are going to want the elf synergies with the changelings in blue. So there's kind of a double theme in running through Sultai.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of double themes, which has been a little bit strange.
Yeah.
Hailstorm tells us that this also triggers with elf tokens. So if you produce an elf token, you will also produce an elf token because that token is an elf, which will then trigger this thing that triggers from elves.
Yeah, it is actually reasonable to note a lot of times these do say like non-token.
They do.
And it doesn't here.
Yeah. So moving on, guys, I think, like I said, at its base, it's a 3 with a huge ceiling all the way up to a 4.
Yep. Next step after that, we have Asika's Chariot. This is the green vehicle I missed earlier when we were talking about vehicles. It's a 3 and a green for a legendary artifact vehicle. The vehicle is a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 green cat creature tokens. Whenever it attacks, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. And it has crew 4.
So it automatically crews itself. It's a 4/4 for 4 that crews itself and then creates more dudes.
Yep, yep, exactly. Now it can only copy tokens. It can't copy other creatures. But you've already got 2 tokens that come with it, so you should have targets for it
that are moderately safe because they're crewing, not attacking.
Yes. I'm generally not a huge fan of something like crew 4 because it can get really awkward, but because it's providing its own power and toughness with it, I think that negates it a little bit.
Yeah, we're typically pretty happy to play like the white one that creates 2 vigilance warrior soldiers or whatever. The 2 knights, you know what I mean? That makes and that's 4 mana, create 2 vigilant knights. This is a bit different, but like a little bit more flexible. And obviously that's a common, this is a rare. But I mean, we're happy to run that. I'm even happier to run this. And maybe we get to copy that giant dragon token we're gonna make from our green red decks.
Yeah.
You never know.
And it's not whenever it like deals damage to a player or something like that. It will trigger the first time you attack. So even if it dies and trades off, you're going to get 1 trigger, and probably still have your cats left behind.
I like this card enough. I'm definitely first picking it, in lieu of some absurd, crazy thing. But I don't think it's winning the game on its own. It's not as impactful as I would like it to be without having a ton of other more valuable tokens. And that said, a 4/4 is not typically hard to deal with. So when it attacks, they could double block, trade it, you get a free cat. So to me, it feels like 4 mana, make 3 cats and eat and trade with something, which is actually really good value.
Very good.
Yeah, that's very good, but it's not winning you the game right then and there. So I mean,
it's incremental advantage, but not game breaking.
I'm in that 4 range. I feel like that feels like a lot of value to me.
Yep, I agree. It's a 4. It has to be answered because eventually you're just going to keep making a token army if they don't answer it, and it's dealing 4 damage. But you're right. It's not a game winner.
Yes, if they can trade, then 3 cats for 4 is pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Finn, the Fang Bearer. We have a legendary human warrior. It's a 1/3 for 2, which is fine. It has Death Touch, which is great for a 1/3. I like that. Something with a little booty. Whenever creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. What in Jiminy Christmas?
So if this is telling me that they're not going to reprint Infect at all, and they're just going to go back to old Poison, I am super excited because I hate Infect.
This is interesting. If they have 10 or more, they lose the game. So
what's really interesting to me about this card is we were just saying, why is that creature giving all elves +2/+2 in Death Touch?
yeah.
Well, now every one of those deals 2 poison.
Yep. And then can we suit up the Death Touch onto the pinger? The black Death Touch aura that pings.
It's combat damage only.
Oh no, boo. Why you ruined my fun? Either way, this card seems great. Even if the rest of its text box is not good, a 2-mana 1/3 for Death Touch seems good.
1/3 is like the exact set of stats I want Death Touch on.
Agreed. I mean, I would love a 2-mana 1/4 with Death Touch.
Sure, but
but I do like this a lot.
Yeah. Again, though, it's not a super impactful card. It's probably going to trade up, which is nice in mana.
We can give it flying with the blue aura. 5-turn clock. Let's go.
5-turn clock. I think this is going to lose a lot of people drafts that are trying to meme kill with poison.
Like me.
I wasn't naming names.
That's going to be a bounty for sure.
But I think the card's good. I mean, I'm thrilled to have it in any green deck. 1/3 Death Touch is a fantastic defensive creature, and this is an annoying attacker because they're that poison is an eventual clock. They're going to have to trade a 3/3 for it. So I think this is right around a 3.
And you can also get them in a really weird situation where, like, unlike most Death Touchers, they're like, okay, I'm just gonna let them ping me for, like, hit me for 1, and then I can attack them with my larger creature. But you're gonna, like, force them to have to block with their larger creature, which they normally wouldn't. Because they're like, okay, well, I can only take a hit from this so many times. So you can really force the action and make them make a favorable trade for you. It's only an uncommon, so that seems nuts. Dr. Contego is also suggesting double strike. So that's cute. But first strike with Death Touch is always the nuts. So that's just like kind of win more. Anytime I get first strike on my Death Toucher, I'm pretty happy. The double strike is just overkill.
If you can give this trample and be a little bit bigger, who knows? But there is no other poison synergy other than a mythic, I believe, in the set. So there's 1 green mythic, unless there's something in all these sagas. So
what you said, poison synergy?
Yeah.
Something that produces poison instead of Death Touch?
That one, it doesn't even do that. It doubles counters. So instead of getting 2, they get 4.
Yeah, but, I mean, I don't think that you're using something else. This isn't supplementing something else. Your Death Touches are supplementing this. So I don't really care too much about that.
Yeah, I just meant there isn't like a poison theme where, the 2 incremental from this maybe contributes with something else.
So we're thinking 3/5 on that one?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, Glittering Frost. We have a snow aura enchantment, Enchant Land. Enchanted Land is a snow. Whenever Enchanted Land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of any color. So we got fixing, ramp, and snow fixing. I like it.
Yep. Green is often in the snow sets, or at least in Modern Horizons, is the base for, a multicolored snow deck. And you need cards like this to enable that.
I will say a lot of times when we have the 3-mana enchant land stuff, it does something. It puts a counter, it creates a 2/2, or you can sack it, late game and draw a card to replace it. So it doesn't have as much staying power as some of the other ones, but it has the flexibility of both producing a different color as well as the color it already produces, as well as fixing for your lands if that is important to you. And then there's also a ton of things that want to count snow permanents, so this counts as an additional option for that as well.
And it actually creates 2 snow permanents itself, and the land it's on.
I agree with that. So, I mean, there's really, you want to play this in the green deck that needs fixing. Obviously, it can't fix 4 green. And then also snow decks, but it's pretty, situational on whether or not you want to run this. I don't think you want to run it in every color. a lot of green decks that don't need fixing aren't going to run this because it doesn't have any of that staying power where you can then sack it and draw a card to replace it.
No, I think it's just green. Just the green snow decks are going to want this.
Yeah, I mean, even just a green deck that isn't snow that wants to splash a bomb or something, I'm pretty happy typically to run these.
That's true.
I'm going to give it a 2, but you'll know when you want it, and when you want it, it's a 3. But you know, ramping just isn't that important in most situations to use a whole card on it.
Yeah, agree with that.
All right, here's the 4/2 with reach. That's weird.
Yep, it's a weird spider.
This spider is confused. It was born with its butt backwards.
It came out but first.
It came out but first. Okay, so how the hell do we evaluate this weird thing? I mean, it's a green beater. So we typically see, sometimes you'll see a 4/2 for 3 in green that's like some weird grizzly berry thing. And it just has reach. And those cards are usually unplayable, but reach, it's maybe playable.
Yeah, like these cards have always been defensive cards. These spiders in green, you know, it's their way of dealing with flyers.
This will deal with it.
It will, but it can only deal with one flyer. It can't hold back multiple flyers.
It won't stop an army of 1/1 flyers from, you know, the threat of being able to eat one each turn.
Yeah,
changes the game versus this, where it's like, okay, well, I'll just attack with both my 2/2s. He trades 1 for 1, which is even, and 3 mana is probably just dead even, and then I can keep bashing. It's iffy.
So, yeah, I mean, if you've got a green aggressive deck, you're just tappy with a 4/2.
Or that card that makes you draw for cards that you have, you know, power 4 or greater.
4 power. Yep. So there are cases for this, but it's not going to be your staple spider in every green deck that you typically have.
Yeah. Typically, I see the 4/2s for 3 in red.
Yes.
And they're like 1.5. This feels like a 2 to me.
Yeah, there's a good point in chat. White did have a lot of more than usual 4 toughness flyers because of all the angels. But again, those are mostly coming in at higher rarities, so you know, it's tough to say that they're printing a common just to answer that. But it's relevant. That being said, you know, this is, I don't know, maybe a sideboard card for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, there have been 1/5 spiders as well. So hypothetically, if my opponent has 2 angels, this is just up, right? This is just way better to eat 1 as opposed to just continually taking 4 every turn. 2/5? I mean,
I think it's just a 2.
It's definitely a bit awkward to evaluate. I don't love it. I think if you've got some synergies with 4 power things, then it's fine. It doesn't have creature type synergy really.
Nope.
And I'm typically not high on 4/2s for 3 just because they trade off so easily.
I think
if your opponent has a bigger deck than you, maybe it trades up on the defensive, but you're in green, so that's not really the business you want to be on, right? Green.
Yeah, you should have plenty of large power.
Yeah, green large defensive creatures does not sound like the business I'm in, so.
No.
2. Grizzly Outrider. We got a 5/5 vanilla for 4. Fine stats? Or for 5, that's what I meant.
Yeah, it's just a fine card. It's an elf and a warrior, so there's some creature type synergies. You know, it's vanilla. It's probably a little bit better than playable. It's probably like a 2/5.
I'm wondering how much I prefer, because a lot of the 4/4s for 5 with meh abilities, we gave those like 2s, and I feel like most of those meh abilities kind of work out to be about a +1/+1. I'm kind of in the 2 boat for this.
That's fair.
Just because if you're like, in order to double block, this could still be very awkward if your opponent has 2 3/3s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the other flip side is right. This eats all of those 4/4s.
Unless they tap it down, it doesn't untap, or unless they have a 4/4 and a 2/2, and then you still can't attack. I just don't know if I love the extra +1/+1 over some of those abilities to give it that half a point. I mean, we're arguing over like a common, which we're not happy to run, but I don't know. It does seem very creature heavy for a set, and I just feel like you're gonna get double blocked on this so much that it's just really not that big. But maybe warrior will be more relevant. Elf seems good.
Elf is, yeah.
Ooh, the one elf gives it +2/+2. Yeah. All right, Guardian. You read this card. I'm gonna go shut the door real quick.
Guardian Glade Walker. We have a 2-mana 1/1 for 1 and a green. It's a shapeshifter, so it has changeling. This card is every creature type. When Guardian Glade Walker enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it can target itself. So at worst, it's coming in as a 2-mana 2/2 changeling. Or it can boost something else you've got. We've seen cards like this before, albeit not with changeling. So I think this is a little better than those have been for the most part. But
this seems good.
Yeah.
The shapeshift ability is really nice.
Yeah, I think that ability, I think without the changeling ability, even if it was a relevant type, but only one relevant type, you'd be at a 2. I think changeling bumps it up to like a 2/5.
I agree with that. We've seen a lot of ETB effects and a lot of lords and a lot of all sorts of crazy things for creature types. Even, cards that if you have a giant in play, continue to ping every turn. Like, there is a lot of mechanics for creature types in the set, far more than normal. So, I'm on that 2/5 range, possibly even more if it's consistently triggering things that are valuable.
Yeah, if you have high quality creature type payoffs, then this gets much better.
Hey, Mr. Zocker V. Gates. All right, we got Horizon Seeker.
Horizon Seeker, it's a 2 and a green for a 3/2 human warrior with boast. You can pay 1 and a green and search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So this is kind of like your Civic Wayfinder type card of the set, except you have to pay mana for it, but it's repeatable if it lives. 3-mana 3/2 is fine. You're going to get at least one trigger out of this, or force them to spend a removal spell on it. So, I'm happy to run this card, but not thrilled.
Yeah, thins the deck. If you can make room for it, it's good.
Yep.
If it was an elf, it would be better.
Yep, but it helps fix. It helps find your snowlands if you need them.
Yeah, that's really nice too.
So I think a lot of green decks want this type of effect. So typically we don't know. I don't know for sure in this set yet. So I think the fact that it gets snowlands is really nice. So I'm gonna have this at a 2/5, but it's on the border between 2 and 2/5 for me.
I have it on a 2/5 as well. I think that the ability, so vanilla 3/2 for 3 is typically our 2 marker. I think this ability is good enough. Like the haste one, I still kind of wanted to keep it around a 2. But this ability seems better, even if you're only trading and searching out one land. The amount of times you want that to be a snowland is going to be, pretty significant. The amount of times that, you're just thinning your deck, you're fixing, you're doing whatever. If it's, if it gets the splash color, you're made. I'm really happy with this card. The boast is also cheap enough to where I think I'm comfortable casting it reasonably often. Play this on 3. On turn 4, you boast and play a 2-drop. Or a combat trick, pump spell or something, seems fine.
Yep.
Icehide Troll. I went and got a airhead because my throat is starting to feel strained, my voice. It's a 2/3 for 3, fine vanilla stats. It's a troll warrior, so it's got 1, but it also is a snow creature, so that's pretty relevant. For 2 snow mana of any color, it gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. So this is something you are going to be wanting to do either in combat or on the blocks. You can also just do it in response to a removal spell. The tapping ability is not all of that important unless they try to first main phase kill it with a spell and then attack you, then it prevents you from blocking, but most of the time you can just block and then do it in response, right? Unless they then remove it at instant speed, then you kind of get in trouble, although you can hopefully have more snow mana to do it again, so it's kind of a minor setback, the tapping issue. Most of the time it shouldn't come up.
Yeah, the tapping part won't come up a ton. It can come up on either turn if they try to instant speed kill it on your first main and they force you to tap it so it can't attack.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing on blocking. You know, it can come up either way.
But that's still
It will.
a 1 for 0, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It will come up at some point, but it is not a huge drawback because most of the time it's going to force them to, you know, 1 for 0 themselves.
I will say if you do have snow
Can't
mana
adapt.
open and you attack and they choose not to block it, maybe if they have open mana, don't pump. Just take the 2 as a win. Hold it open as a, you know, an answer to removal. Because they might be trying to trick you into sinking your mana into this and then removing it in response.
Yeah. So that being said, I think the card is, you know, fine. If you have a lot of snow mana, then just the fact that you can make it a 4/3 is a pretty big deal. But or even a 6/3.
Yeah, at its base, I think it's a 2, and I think the decks that want this want it a lot. So I'm gonna hedge up a little bit on a 2/5 because you could be partially in the snow game and get some late game effects off of this. And Indestructible's pretty strong for a 4/3. That's pretty powerful.
Yep, agreed. I will note that agreed with one thing in chat that all the black common removal still kills this because they're all minus effects or exile effects. There's the one uncommon that's destroy that it stops, but it does still die to all the black common removal.
Yeah, some people don't know that, you know, Indestructible does not get around negative effects.
Yep. All right. In Search of Greatness is kind of a weird enchantment. It's green for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a permanent spell from your hand with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the highest converted mana cost among other permanents you control without paying its mana cost. If you don't, scry 1. So it is allowing you to, if you have a, you know, whatever your highest CMC is among permanents, not this, it's other permanents. If you have something in your hand, a permanent that costs exactly 1 more, you can play it for free. Which is pretty specific, but very powerful.
It has to be that one specifically, and the longer this is in play, the harder and harder it gets to activate, right?
Yes.
Because you have less cards in your hands, and the mana cost is getting higher and higher, which you'll have less and less spells to compensate for that. I don't think this feels very limited playable.
No, I don't either. It does have a, you know, a fail case of scry 1 on your upkeep every turn, which is not the worst thing in the world, but also not worth a card.
Agreed. You know, there are some creatures that will do that for you. Not maybe in this set, but in general. I don't know that I'm playing a card for that.
Yeah, this is you know, one of those, like, it's worse, but like birthing pod type effects that requires, you know, this exactly equal to 1 plus, and that's always hard to make work in limited, to have the exact right curve. And in this case, it's even harder because they have to be in your hand. And it's only permanent, so you can't play spells for free with this.
So
I
we're in
think
that one range?
Yeah, this is a card I'm going to want to try to make work at some point in the format, but it's not actually a good idea.
You kill people with that, I will poison them to death.
It just sounds good.
All right. A 1/2 for 1 reach. With a mana dork ability.
Yeah. You know, relevant creature type. I don't love 1 mana 1/2s. And you have to have 2 creatures to make any mana with it. 2 untapped creatures. This and another one.
This is a combination of things I typically don't love, but there is enough of them piled together where I'm moderately happy. 1/2s for 1, reach, sometimes tap a creature to create a mana for fixing, but like all of those things added together, you know, if you have elf synergies and a splash, you know, seems pretty good. No removal or flying defense and a splash seems kind of good, right? Like there's enough things where you can kind of double dip and get some value in several situations. I mean, I still don't love this card, but I mean, it seems slightly more playable than normal.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of little things that still don't add up together to actually being worth a full card, unless you have
You need at
very
least
heavy.
two of the you want at least two of the things it provides, right, for it to be worth it.
Yeah, I think without the heavy elf synergy, reach, on a 1/2, it's going to. I don't remember seeing a lot of like 1/1 spirits that it can hold back.
There were a couple of things that produced 1/1 flyers.
Yeah, but there wasn't a ton of it.
I agree.
And
there was a 1/2 first striking bird. There was, I think there was 2 X1 flyers in white in addition to anything that made a spirit. Again, not great, but like I think you have to have elf synergies plus something, right? A splash. Then I think this is good, but other than that, probably not.
Yeah, I'm putting this at 1.5.
I think it's 1.5 as well. If you meet the elf and the other requirement, I think it's a 2.5, but that's a pretty corner case.
Yep.
All right, a 3-mana sorcery. King Harold's Revenge. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control and gains trample. Must be blocked if able. That's pretty cute.
Yeah.
We saw a 1/3 Death Toucher. Putting this on that seems pretty spicy. Oh, it says must be blocked if able, but it doesn't say every creature must block, so it's not the same.
No. This card I think is pretty bad.
At sorcery speed, yeah, I'm not in love with it. It's a bit expensive.
Yeah, there are going to be board states where this card is good, but I think they're going to be few and far between, and you're not going to want to spend 3 mana at sorcery speed for this effect.
It is not flexible enough.
Yeah, so I think this is just a 1.
Agreed. Litjara's Glade Warden. It is a shapeshifter, 3/3 for 4. We've seen a ton of those. It's a shapeshifter, so it has a lot of synergy there. A 3-mana exile creature card from your graveyard. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Activate this ability anytime you could cast a sorcery. I'm in. Give it to me.
Yeah, 4-mana 3/3 is not the exact stats we want, but they're not unplayable with abilities. Changeling's nice. That ability is a great mana sink in the late game. I always get annoyed when I see things activate only anytime you can cast a sorcery, because this means you can't leave it up as a blocker.
It would be insanely powerful though if you could put the counters on something at instant speed.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
That would be busted.
Yeah, I still like this card though.
3 mana, put 2 counters on something at instant repeatable. What do you think? What are you thinking for score wise?
I think it's a 3. But I guess if you're in a heavy creature deck that's going to put a lot of things in the graveyard, and you can actually get a number of activations out of this, then it goes up, or heavy tribal synergies.
Yeah, so even not in heavy tribal synergies, the fact that it's shapeshifter means you can like dip into multiple things that have some synergies. You'll get a ton of bonuses. I feel like there's enough things that ask for synergy to where you might not have enough synergy of any one type, but you might have multiple things that trigger. So like, you'll have 1 giant card and you'll have 1 berserker card or something. So this will activate both of them, giving you a lot more flexibility. I think that ability late game is good enough to where I'm on that 3/5 plan. It's not gonna, if it doesn't get answered, you can win a game with this, right?
Can.
I mean, you have to have a fair amount of creatures, but my decks tend to be creature heavy as well, which is also maybe why I'm leaning this direction.
Yeah, I think the card's good. I'm always a little tentative on anything that requires you to exile specific things from your yard, because of how frustrating it is when you don't have them. It. But creature is the easiest thing. So.
All right. Mammoth Growth, +4/+4 till end of turn for 3 at instant speed with Foretell. So you got a little flexibility there as well. So you can flip it for just 1 mana. If you have extra mana in a turn, this becomes a very cheap combat trick.
Yeah, I think these are the kind of cards I almost never play. But with Foretell, it makes it more interesting because it can actually be a 1 mana combat trick on the turn that's relevant.
Yeah, it's about average because we've seen like Titanic Strength at 2 mana for 4, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably just dead average. Sometimes you're able to spend a little extra mana that you aren't going to use to make this an easier combat trick versus sometimes you're going to cast it for a harder combat trick.
Yeah, I think for me at least, combat tricks, there's a bigger difference between 1 and 2 than there is 2 and 3. Like I'm unhappy already at 2, so 3 just makes me more unhappy. But at 1, I'm pretty happy with cards. So I think there's I think that's a bigger gap. But either way, we're talking a pretty average card here.
Well, the nice thing is these kinds of combat tricks tend to sit in your hand for quite a while.
Yes.
So playing it for the 2 mana is almost free in the foretell section because, in a 3-turn, span mid-game, you're typically going to be having some excess mana. So I look at that as kind of middle ground. If you're super aggressive and you want to be curving out, probably not. But in your typical, mid to late game green deck, you're going to have some free mana at some point. So yeah. I think that said, I still think it's a 2, but I think it's playable.
Agreed. 2 sounds about right.
We got another changeling, a 3/1 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. I'm happy to run this. It's filler with it's a 2-drop filler that, did I say 3/1? I'm a little dyslexic. So it's got a nice upside. Be able to remove an artifact or enchantment. In a set with crews and sagas and things, I feel like there's enough upside here to just kind of run this as a vanilla creature.
Yeah, there's really no reason not to play this card. It's a 2-mana 1/3 with multiple upsides.
I don't feel like my 2-drop is ever crowded with powerful enough cards to think that this is not going to make the cut.
Agreed. You don't want to be running main deck cards that all they do is exile artifacts or enchantments. So if you can get them on a relevant body, also with the relevant creature type, that's just great.
Yep. If you draw it early, fills your curve. If you draw it late, hey, hold on to it. It'll get its money in. There's
you might have a target, and if not, you might get some value out of the changeling aspect.
Oh yeah, the changeling is great. What are you thinking for this card? I'm on that 2/5 plan.
2/5. Yep. It's still, it's got a lot of upsides, but they're all limited, so it's not a huge payoff, but it's a card I'm happy to play.
All right. Old growth troll. That's tiny text. I'm gonna let you read it.
Yeah, we have Twitch chat on a card. Old growth troll is a 4/4 for 3 mana, but green, so a bit of an awkward casting cost.
Took me a second.
It's a troll warrior, so it's a 4/4 trampler. When old growth troll dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield. It is now an aura enchantment with enchant forest you control, and enchanted forest has tap, add green, and 1 tap, sacrifice this land, create a tapped 4/4 green troll warrior creature token with trample.
Huh.
So that is a bizarre combination of effects, but they all add up to a pretty nice package. I mean, you start off with a 3-mana 4/4 trample. Admittedly, hard to cast on turn 3 for triple green.
Yeah, it's like a turn 5 trampler.
Yeah. And when it dies, when it was a creature, the first time it dies, it comes back as an aura that enchants a forest, makes the forest produce double mana, and gives it the ability to pay 1 and sack it to make another 4/4 green troll later with trample later in the game or right away. It's basically it's two 4/4s for 4 mana over multiple turns. Like that's incredible value.
I agree. It also adds double mana if you need to ramp in the later game, because hypothetically, you could be casting this on 3 or 4, depending if you have nice curve or fixing. So if you happen to, then it's not unreasonable to think that this will trade for something, maybe a 4/2 crap spider or something, and then you can then ramp into your 6 drops, and then when that's no longer relevant, you just poop out another dude. This is great value. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, this is one of those cards where you play it and then you attack with it, and even if they can trade for it, they're just sitting there going, "Oh, damn it!"
Yeah, if I kill this, I have to deal with it again.
Yeah, and that's the exact sort of opinion you want at it. That's what you want your opponent to be thinking.
I will say 2 4/4s not in play at the same time is not necessarily earth-shattering, game-winning stuff, but it is great for the tempo, and it definitely can swing a game in your direction very early.
Yeah.
What are we thinking on this?
So I want to say it's a 4/5 because of how great the value is. It's a little weird because our scale talks about like if you don't answer it, and in this case, you're okay with them answering it because it comes back again. So it's a little weird in that regard, but there's just so much value in this card, and it's so easy to get.
Well, it's not easy to get with the triple green pips. That's kind of why I drop it down to a 4, just because it's something that you're going to be casting late enough most of the time to where I think that value is a little bit dropped. Like, they might not have to answer it on turn 5, right? A 4/4 on turn 5 is just not that scary. It's a little scary, but I think it'll just take you too many turns for it to really hit home.
Yes, it's pretty scary if you're not playing green and you don't have something that can block it all day. Like, you're going to have to answer it.
I mean, every single... So double block situations typically, right? So a 2/2 and a 3/3 is pretty easy to answer it. But every single color had a 4-mana 4/4.
But that's fine.
5-mana 4/4.
You've just traded and you're getting another one back. Like, that's getting your value.
I agree, but when you get to a 4/5 range, you're getting to the point where you're killing them with a giant flying dragon in 2 turns. Where I don't think this card is doing that.
Not, I don't know. It's a cheap, effectively guaranteed 2-for-1. So yeah, maybe I'm a little high on it, but maybe just because maybe the triple green makes it.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna rein it back a little bit with the 3. I think if it came out faster, I would be on the same plan. It is a 2-for-1, but like, you know, there are a lot of times combat tricks and stuff can be 2-for-1s too, which...
Yes, but they come with risk attached.
I agree, but those are unplayable versus a bomb that instantly wins you the game is what you're comparing it to.
I think there are very few cards that are guaranteed 2-for-1s. This is as close as you can get, other than like while still affecting the board, as opposed to like a divination. Which
I mean, a 4/5 just kind of stonewalls this.
Yeah. Okay. We're clearly going to disagree on this card.
Okay. Path of the Old World. When Path of the Old World tree enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Pay stupid mana, sacrifice this, and you gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, target opponent loses 2 life, Path of the Old World deals 2 damage. Up to 1 target creature, you gain a 2/2 bear creature token. So constructed?
Yeah, this is unplayable. You're just not getting to 7 mana, 5 colors. You're just not. And if you can, I kind of want to even, if you spend that much effort and contort your whole deck to get there, I want even bigger an effect than this, as good of an effect as that is. Agreed.
Yeah, definitely constructed card. We're not looking to play this ever. It's an uncommon as well. So, we're not rare drafting it or anything. No reason to play it. All right.
Next up, we have Ravenous Lindworm. It's a 6-mana 6/6, 4 green for a worm. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life.
So it's a mammoth. We've seen this before.
Yep.
They just changed the art. I mean, it's a fine fatty if you need fatties. There is a life gain synergy deck in white, so you could potentially have a green-white life gain deck if you've got a couple of those payoff angels. Yeah, Honey Mammoth, that's the one.
Yeah.
But I mean, not excited. It's just a big dumb idiot in lieu of having a better big dumb idiot. 2?
Yeah. 2. Yep.
We've got a changeling, a 3/2 for 3. Fine, I'm in. Let's play it. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. It's interesting that we're seeing so many shapeshifters in green.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like blue-green are your 2 shapeshifter colors in this set.
And they don't necessarily need to go together because each color has enough shapeshifters to support whatever the mechanic, the creature type mechanic is for the other color. So that's really nice. So you can have, you know, shapeshifters with your berserkers, you can have shapeshifters with your angels, you can have shapeshifters with whatever. They don't really necessarily need to go together, which is nice.
Yeah,
It's a lot of free value.
it is. You do want to have a decent number of cards of one type in your deck. Now, maybe that's changeling, so you're really flexible on what that type is. But yeah, I mean, it's a 3-mana 2/3 that can get you a few free cards off the top of your deck, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's also helpful for setting up your deck. This could also be can you count snow for this? Because it says snow creature. So yeah,
Snow
that won't count.
Snow is not a creature type. It is a super type.
It is a super type. Okay, that makes more sense. So but the nice thing is let's say you have the cards that like the uncommon that lets you look at the top card of your library and put a snow permanent in your hand. This allows you to just smooth that out and you're not having to waste the mana to miss all the time. If you have any synergies that allow you to scry or mill cards or whatever, dig through your deck, this might help you know whether or not you want to do that, with the upside of hitting, you know, 5 cards that happen to all be humans, right? Like there's enough overlap in all the creature types between shapeshifter and there being 2 creature types attached to each creature that I think this is really good value.
Yeah, I mean, this is another, we've seen a few cards like this where you're going to want to play these in your 16 to 18 creature decks. But that's fine. It's green. Those decks tend to be more creature heavy. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, this card's great. It's relatively
there's also situations where I'm like, okay, I'm going to cast this removal spell on their end step because if I draw something, I'm going to want to play it. Whereas like it might not be the best opportunity. Stuff like that, happens to me all the time where I'm hedging my bets based on what I think I will draw. Or
yeah, the information on what your top card is certainly value in and of itself.
Yes. And then I still think, like, with the amount of overlap, your worst case scenario is 5 creatures that this will hit. With all of the crazy shapeshifters in this set. There's like 2 green common shapeshifters, aren't there? At least.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to make sure you remember when this card's in your deck, remember what your spread of creatures is and what's in your hand and what's already been played.
I think if you've got bare minimum synergy, this is a 3. If you've got decent synergy, it's a 4.
Yeah, I think that's in the right range. All right, Rootless U is a 5-mana 5/4 tree folk, 3 green. When it dies, you can search your library for a creature card with power or toughness 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So when it dies, you can go get something bigger. There aren't a ton of targets in the set for that. Kind of scrolling through green, I only see the 1/6/6 and 1 mythic that we'll get to later. So 2 targets. I know we had a 3/6 cat in white.
There was a lot of giants in blue that were 6 power, I think.
It's 6 toughness.
Oh, that's what I meant.
And I know there were a few 6/5s in red. There's a 7/7 rare in blue.
The red's usually not that fat, but I think the blue. Someone says the 06 Ox. You can search that out for free.
Yeah. There's only 3 blue cards and 2 of them are rares. And 1 5/6 common.
Not in love with the card, right? So it's like kind of a 2.
Yeah, I mean the stats are okay on its own. So I mean,
you're not likely to be running that many huge butt creatures. Maybe 2,
no.
And whether or not you still have them in your deck, you might not have any, most likely.
Yeah. It's a card that goes up in value if you have, a big bomb that fits this. Where you'll be willing to take the chance that you may have already drawn it.
If you got the booty.
Yeah. But yeah, not great.
All right, moving right along. Roots of Wisdom. We're at exactly 1 hour and 4 minutes, so we're doing okay. Mill 3 cards, then return a land or elf from your graveyard to your hand. If you can't, draw a card.
Yeah, I mean, there's no fail case to this card because at worst it cycles, but it's not exciting. I got this right around a 2.
I would want some sort of synergy with like having things in my graveyard. I don't typically. This feels kind of worse to me than like look at the top 3 cards, pick a card, put the rest on the bottom, any, you know, in any color like we do, and I tend to put that at a 2. This feels worse.
Yeah, I think the part that's nice about this is that if you have elves cards that fit this elves that you really might want to get back, it's can be pretty good. Like if you have the Elf Lord, you know, if they've killed it, you can get it back. If you have Realm Walker, you can get it back if they've killed it. But yeah, I mean,
That's corner case, right?
It is, but it feeds the things that have exile X from your graveyard.
Exile creatures, yeah. That's something to note. So I think it's unplayable unless you've got those synergies.
Yeah, I think just like some of the runes, which are bad, I don't consider any of them unplayable just because their fail cases cycle. And this is even better because the the runes actually fail cases nothing if they kill it in response. But yeah, I mean, you're not thrilled to play this without a bunch of great targets to get back. So you're in that 1.5 to 2 range.
All right, we got the Rune of Might. It is normal, play it, draw a card for 2. As long as it is enchanted to a creature, it gets +1/+1 and has trample. So fine, we've seen some of these things in previous sets that were okay because it redraws a card. As long as it is attached to equipment, the equipment has that ability. So that's kind of a nice perk if you are able to put it onto an equipment, which is also less likely to be removed. +1/+1 trample is fine. If you're in green, you've probably got some fatties. It replaces itself, so there's really no downside to playing it, but that said, it's going to be an easy cut as well.
Yeah, I think the blue one of these is the only one I'm happy to play. Just because giving something flying can be, you know, can create other synergies with combat damage and things like that. But you know, they're all right. They all replace themselves, so they're all, you know, 22nd, 23rd cards that you'll probably cut more than you'll play.
Yep, I agree with that. So, I mean, it's at a 2. I'm not happy about it. I hope I have better quality cards, but if I don't, then this is fine. It doesn't hurt much. Now, I will say that they go down the less creatures you have in your deck. So if you're more of a control-y deck with, you know, 12 creatures, 10 creatures, then you don't want to be in this this game. But if you are in a more aggressive deck, getting to play the ability, and if, you know, on the off chance that it doesn't ever get removed, pretty good value. Like that's good for you. You get that extra card and the extra pressure. But if they do remove it, there's not a whole lot of downside because it did replace itself. So it's okay. Or unless they kill it in response, but that's oftentimes easy enough to play around if you're careful.
Yep.
All right, we have a Packmate, 4 mana, 3/3. We've seen a ton of those. It seems to be the most common, way more 4 mana 3/3s than we've ever seen in any other set that I know of.
Yeah.
When it enters battlefield, draw a card. Okay, I'm listening. With Foretell.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's hard to compare across sets, but we saw a 4 mana 3/2 that replaced itself, and that card ended up being, I think, better than we anticipated at the start of the set.
Agreed. Yeah, that card was fine, and this one has a little bit more flexibility. Now it is a wolf, so it doesn't have that same elf synergy. But I agree. I think that one was way better than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
a 3/2 ended up being better than I thought it would be in that set. I think is the key. I like a draw, but I don't know if I liked my draw on a weak creature. But it ended up not being weak. It ended up trading up and even being, you know, a fair amount of pressure on its own.
Yeah, I think here the fact we've seen a lot of 4 mana 3/3s, and we trade with them, and we've gotten a card back. I'm fine with that. You have the flexibility of Foretell. So this, you know, if you get stuck on, you know, if you Foretell this on turn 2, you didn't have a play, and you play your, you know, and you don't have a third land, you've got a chance to redraw into it. You know, there's some corner cases where that can help as well. So I'm happy to play this card. I think it's a 2/5.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I will say that the set seems to be a little chunky around the middle. Typically, in a lot of sets, you see, you know, a nice smattering of cards in every, you know, early, mid, and late drops. Whereas this feels like there's a lot of these 3/3s and 5/4s kind of bulked into the center. Normally it's like a straight line as far as like the bell curve of creature distribution, maybe a little lower on the top end, but this feels more like this huge fat center, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think we do run into a lot of times in limited sets where your 4-drop slot is particularly clunky. This feels it even more than usual, which is why I like the flexibility of foretell on these cards, because it means it doesn't make your 4-drop slot as clunky, because you can, you know, make this into a turn 3 play. Or you can play it, you can play a 3-drop on turn 5 and foretell this and then do it again on turn 6. Um,
For
so I
me, the
think that
last couple of sets haven't seemed like there was a ton of 4 and 5s, and I haven't had to
no,
cut a ton because most of them were trash. This set seems to kind of
that's
revolve
fair.
around them.
That's fair. Yeah, there are some sets where that comes at 3 instead of 4. I think we've seen that more recently than we have the 4-drop
My
Glade.
my 3 slots have been more chunked up than my four
Yeah,
slots. Like there's always like the 3/3 crab, and like in the last set it was like the 4/5 vanilla warrior and like all of this stuff. But the only ones I really want to play are like the 2/4 with landfall, or the 2/3 with landfall, or like there wasn't enough things that I was excited to run in 4, where it's just like it seems like there's nothing but 4 drops here.
yeah, there are definitely more in this set than we've seen recently. Which is why I think I value the ones with foretell higher than the ones that don't have it.
All right. So we have a mana dork, 2 mana 2/2. So it's already good. It's a rogue, already good. It's a snow creature, excellent. Helps with some synergies. Untap snow land. So it is a very specific mana dork. But if you are not a snow deck, but you pick up some free snow lands, it's still a bear. So you're gonna you're helping fill out your curve, trigger your elf synergies, and then on the off chance that even if you don't have any other snow cards, you could just pick up a late snow land in your colors, then this becomes a mana dork, which is kind of nice and ramps you into it. So there's very little downside to this.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
there's low downside. I do think this will be fairly easy for the snow decks to find, because while there's low downside, the other decks are not going to prioritize it.
I agree with that.
Um, so that makes it most likely this is going to be in a snow deck, and in those decks, it's going to be very good. But even, to be fair, even with the snow decks, you're still only looking at probably half your mana base being snowlands. Um, so you're not always going to have an early target to ramp, which is when you most want it. But you're right. The fail case is a 2 mana 2/2, so there's no reason not to play it.
Yeah, and I can, like I said, I can definitely see myself, even in my green decks, in a lot of sets, I struggle to find well-rounded 2s.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I play a 2 mana 2/2 just vanilla, even in draft, not even just in sealed. So,
Yep.
with 2 snowlands in my deck and any elf synergies, this becomes quite good, I think. And it's a snow creature, so if you are in the snow deck, this becomes nutso. And I think you're right, it's not quite good enough for green to take it at a high rate, like we've seen with like the red snow removal, that snow decks are still just not going to be able to get. This is not that, but it is more playable than a lot of the snow cards we've seen.
Yeah, this is one of the snow cards that we'll see play outside of snow. But it won't be prioritized highly by them. So yeah, I think you're in like the 2/5 range.
That's what I put. Snakeskin Veil, instant, put +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains hexproof until end of turn. We're gonna probably differ on this. I love these combat tricks.
Yeah, I'm going to be lower on this than you, but these are the kind of tricks I do like. For 2 reasons. Hexproof makes it good against removal, where most combat tricks are terrible against removal.
And it
Um,
leaves the
and
counter.
it leaves the counter.
I
Yep.
love that. That's
Yep.
great.
It functions more as a aura, in that sense. Um, it leaves a lasting benefit. So, and it can be used proactively or reactively. So this is the kind of combat trick I do like.
Agreed. What are you thinking for score?
Um, I think this is on a border for me between 2/5 and 3, just
Oh,
because
yay! That's
I
high
don't
for you.
it is
That's
very
so
high for me.
high.
It is very high for me. I would, I'm just resistant to putting tricks at 3, but because this one is very hard to get 2-for-1 on, not impossible, but hard. Um, you're probably looking at a 3 on this.
Agreed. It's gonna negate a lot of premium removal, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
the fact that
common, so it's usually an uncommon. So I think it's going to be played around more than it usually is. Like the last set, Shelter, right? Protection from a certain color. That's an uncommon, so you can get, anytime you draft it, you get people because they don't play it around it because it's so rare to see. Whereas this is going to be a lot more common, so catching people off guard is going to be harder, but it's still so cheap.
and it's unlike some combat tricks, I think, because it's a protective one, it goes up in value the more high value targets you have.
Agreed.
Some other ones that are just your basic pump spells are actually better with low value creatures, because at least if you're trying to make them better. Here you're just trying to protect it.
Agreed. All right, we're almost done. We're at an hour and 15 minutes, so let's keep it going. We got the Spirit of Aldergard.
Yep.
4 mana, Snow Spirit Bear. When this Elder Guard enters the battlefield, search your library for a snow land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. The spirit gets +1/+0 for each other snow permanent, not just snow land. This is a great card in the snow deck.
Yeah, you need a fairly high minimum quantity for this to be good. Minimum quantity of snow permanents, because it is a 4 mana 0/4. It does not count itself. But it replaces itself, to a degree. It replaces the card. You're getting a snowland, assuming you have them in your deck. And a lot of times you're specifically looking for snowlands, so like you would get.
The search for itself means, search for a land means it does kind of count itself because it produces that land, right?
Yeah, it might not count itself till next turn, but it does count itself in that way. You're right. So yeah, I mean, if you can make this 3/4, you're pretty happy with it, I'd say.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's getting one of those 3 itself, so that's not very hard to do.
I think it's a 1 in most decks. I think in the Balls Deep Snow deck, it's about a 3/5. It's not a home run, but fishing out a land, fixing snowlands are very important. So just even if he doesn't get very big before he gets removed, a lot of times having that extra snow land is going to be pretty huge for you, because you can tap things down cheap, you can do so much. And the snow cards that are very dependent upon snow are really dependent upon snow, where I think that the other sets were a little bit more mild. So I'm pretty happy with this. What do you think of that 1 to 3.5 range?
I think that range seems good. I think this card is going to actually be taken early on in the draft by decks that don't know that there's snow yet, because even if you're not deep into snow, the ability to go get your 1 out of your 3 snowlands could be relevant.
Yeah, so people might hedge on maybe being snow and take this. Yep. But once you get to pack 2, that's not really going to be as much of an issue for sure.
Yeah,
it's
but I like
uncommon.
I like your range. Yeah.
All right.
Struggle for Skimfar. This is a 4 mana sorcery, 3 and a green. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. And it has Foretell for a single green. So actually Foretell makes it cheaper.
That is interesting.
A green. So a total of 3 instead of 4.
That's one of the first times we've seen that.
I mean, if you ignore Foretell, this is just Hunt the Weak. Put a +1/+1 counter on fight, sorcery speed.
Yes.
And that card is always highly sought after on green, in every format.
Agreed.
Foretell gives you the flexibility to split it up over time and makes it cheaper. Like that's not just that's not just flexibility, that's cost reduction. I think this card is great. This is green's removal spell. Agreed.
Yeah, this card is good. We did see another fight spell as well, actually 2 in the set, but the other one's 1 mana but kind of snow dependent.
Yeah.
4 mana sorcery spells are easy to get 2 for 1 though.
Yep, that is the vulnerability of every sorcery fight spell. But that's what green gets for removal. So I think this is a 3/5.
Yeah, I think it's a 3/5. I'm a little hesitant to rate it as highly as I typically would, just because there was a fair amount of instant speed 4 damage red spells, which we don't see. I think red removal is really good in the set. Like the Demon Bolt and stuff at common seems real fucking rough against this card.
Yeah, it does.
Typically the larger red removals are sorcery speed. Even Into the Royal, or not Into the Royal, but Royal Eruption is sorcery, right?
Yeah.
This seems more people are gonna get got with this card than typical, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but I also just think that's the price of playing green.
The price is steeper.
This is the removal. Yeah, but this is the removal you get. So, and it's the best. I think, and it's the best one in the set. If this card was red, no way is it highly rated, because you have other options. But
well, the rating isn't just based on what you have available to you. The rating is how good is it in comparison to the rest of the set. And if something is easier to answer in this set in comparison to other sets, I don't think you can rate it as highly. I agree this is what green gets and it's as good as it's going to get, but if if it's bad, it's still bad. Like, you can't give it a 5 just because it's the best thing green has.
No, I agree, but I think that has to be taken into consideration. What green, you still need removal. And yeah, I agree. If it's flat out bad, it's bad. But this is still good. It's just riskier.
Okay, I guess I'm just a little confused. So if it's typically a 3/5 in a set where it's better, compared to easier to play, easier to get value out of compared to all of the things around it, if this is worse,
I don't think it is. I think it's riskier, but it's higher. It's better because of Foretell. I think those balance out.
Yeah, okay, that's a good argument. I was strictly thinking of like the actual, like, once it is cast, whether or not you're actually going to get your value out of it, or if what percentage of the time does it normally resolve versus the amount of time it will resolve. Now, that's all I was thinking about. But you're right. If you're casting it for 1, the flexibility on it is much nicer. So you're not actually getting nailed for 4 mana every time, which kind of mitigates that the fact that it's worse, is that you aren't getting nailed for 4 mana. Okay, I'm on that boat then. Without the Foretell, though, I think I go to a 3.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I was not considering that. I was really confused as to why you were rating it so highly as is. I was like, all right, we have a very cute squirrel animal, Taski, Bearer of Secrets. It is a legendary squirrel. It's a Tishka.
We have a commander squirrel. We have a squirrel commander now.
The spell can't be countered. It is indestructible. Oh, cute. Taski, Bearer of Secrets, attacks each combat if able. When a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Whenever a creature, not this creature?
Yeah, I mean, if it was this creature, this card would be unplayable at a 4-mana 1/1 because that's never getting through. But when it's every creature and it's indestructible, so hard to get rid of, it just sits there and makes all your other creatures, basically have to be blocked.
Yeah, if you've got the 1/1, they've got a 3/3 on board. They can't really, like, normally they would just race you, but they kind of can't because you'll draw cards, which is great. It's indestructible. The reason I think that they're making it attack every turn is that you can't sit back on it and block bigger things if you're that far in the hole. So that's, I think, a good mechanic that they put on it, very balancing. Like, I would love to see this with a couple of flyers in my deck and just draw infinite.
Yeah, and even though they will be able to block it easily as a 1/1, they still have to. They can't just take 1 because you're drawing.
Which means you're putting them in a weird situation in a race. Card's great.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. Now, it is terrible if you're behind. It's a 4-mana 1/1 that doesn't do anything.
That doesn't, and also doesn't block. Yeah, it's rough.
Can't block. So it is an awful card if you're behind. But if you're at parity or you're developing out and the game's still in the balance, this card is great.
What do you rate it?
I have it as a 3 just because of how bad it is when behind. But this could be a 3. It could be a 3/5. We're gonna have to see how this format plays out.
I think the likelihood of you getting creatures in is going to be very, very dependent on how good this card is. I think if you are a, let's say, green-red deck, your creatures are pretty easy to block, to deal with. Your opponents can play around it in such a way that it's pretty minimal difficulty. If you're in the if you're in blue or white with some flyers, this gets better. The blue unblockable Yeti, things like that are going to make this really, really annoying.
Yep, and this this forces them to create blocks that they may not otherwise risk, which makes your combat tricks better.
Yes, that's true. Because they have to just okay, I'll just block my good creature on the squirrel, and then you're just like, gotcha. Whereas normally they'd just be like, well, it's not worth the risk, I'll just take 1.
Yeah, or normally I'd just take this 3/3, but here I'll risk my 2/2/2s in a double block to get rid of it, and now you just kill one of them and you get a 2-for-1.
Yeah. More thing I was gonna say, but I think I forgot. Ooh, could we give this Death Touch with the black rune?
We can.
Suck it! We're gonna kill so many things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the card that rune's good with it. The blue rune is good with this card. Give it flying or give something else flying to get through. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for this card, but the floor on it is very low.
Death Touch Invincible Squirrel, that must be blocked. Oh my god.
I think we found our second bounty of the format for you.
Can't wait.
You're gonna be drafting a lot of green.
Yep. Pack 3, I'm gonna open this and just switch to green black. So excited. It's an invincible squirrel! That has to be blocked! Alright, we got a planeswalker. Right. Is this the first monocolor planeswalker you've seen?
This is the only monocolor planeswalker in the set. It is Tyvar Kell. It's a new planeswalker. 2 green for a legendary planeswalker, Tyvar. It comes into play with 3 loyalty. And it has a static ability. Elves you control have tap, add black to your mana pool. +1 is put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target elf, untap it, and it gains Death Touch until end of turn. Its 0 creates a 1/1 green elf warrior token. And its -6 gives you an emblem with whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until end of turn, and you draw 2 cards.
Good job. Okay, this seems great.
Yeah, this card is great. It's
the fact that it makes a body means it's you can play it relatively unprotected, and it's only 4 mana, so it's fine. One of the things about cheaper planeswalker creatures is that you have to be at parity or you have to be ahead, which makes it kind of a win more. Which, you know, it does win. It makes it really hard for your opponent to come back from. But a lot of times you'll have a planeswalker that's a good planeswalker, but you are kind of like a lot of the Lilianas. You can't really play if you're too far behind, with the exception of the one that makes them sack 2 creatures. But the other one that makes them discard, stuff like that, if you play them naked, it's too tough. But if you can make an elf here with a creature, you know, even if you're a tad bit behind, it lets you make it protect him, and then the next turn you can stabilize by dumping a bunch of stuff. And that's really, really nice. And I think this is just a 5 for me.
Yeah, the card's great. It's obviously better in an elf deck because there's a chance you can play it with elves on board and then play a second spell that turn, another creature.
Yes.
Because all those elves are now mana dorks, and the elves it creates are mana dorks as well.
Yes. Now, it is important to note that, like, the elves you cast are only the ones that trigger the ultimate. So, like, yes. you wouldn't want to, like, if you can pop it and you have elves in your deck, you might want to do that as opposed to risking having him stay around to keep him, just because he himself won't trigger that ability. So it might be worth it in your interest to get the ability on the board. That's, you know, kind of a corner case, but you know, it is important to note it's not ETB, which usually these kinds of effects are.
Yep, agreed.
All right, last card. This one ran us a little longer. Oh god, so much text.
Yep. All right, yep, I'll get this one. It's Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. Vorinclex is back from New Phyrexia. It's a 4 green 6/6 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. The first time we've seen Phyrexian as a creature type as well. So it's a 6/6 with trample and haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead.
Poison!
And if an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. So, you know, obviously on its face, it's a 6 mana 6/6 trample haste, which is great.
That does a bunch of shit.
And it doubles your counters, the counters you put on, and halves the counters they put on.
Yep.
So, you know, this card is just great. You obviously sometimes it will just be a, you know, 6/6 trample haste, but that's pretty good.
That'll kill someone.
Yeah.
If you have any synergies, which it shouldn't be hard to find them, even if you don't get to, you know, kill them with poison. Here's the question though: if you have the poison guy and this, do you not swing with this so you can try to kill them with poison? Mission accepted. All right, guys. So what do you think this rating is? 6/6 trample or haste for 6 is already pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think this is probably a 4/5.
I think on its own it's a 4/5. Yeah. If you've got some decent synergies, then I think this can win you the game. It's pretty crazy.
It's only a 4/5 on its own because if they kill it right away, you've gotten nothing out of it.
It has no lasting effect.
And you've lost mana on the exchange, most likely.
Yeah, if they have a 4/4 and a 3/3 and like you put this down, you're not, it's not a home run, right? It's not doing its job.
Yep. Note that this does double Planeswalker loyalty, so if you happen to get both mythics, the Planeswalker we just talked about would come in with 6 loyalty and can immediately ultimate.
Yeah, I think there's a green-blue Planeswalker too, right? In the flips.
Yep, we've got more coming, but
all right, guys. So 4/5 with a ceiling of like 7.
Yep.
All right, so that is the end of the green, guys. We're going to go ahead and end this video. I will be recording the rest of them today. So if you're watching this on YouTube, like I said earlier in the video, they will either be up right now or they will be up very, very shortly. I will make sure I upload them as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one when we go over our multicolor and modal cards. Thanks, guys. I'd like to give a special thank you to those of you who have signed up for our Patreon. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. This content is also sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. and KMC Sleeves. If you guys enjoyed the content, consider checking out the links below and using our discount codes. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.